Though art has been around for a very long time, not all artists embrace their dark side. Here's a list of some who chose to depict a more, shall we say, sinister telling of life and death. Here we see Caravaggio's depiction of Judith beheading Assyrian general Holofernes. Theodore Géricault, a French painter who was part of the Romantic movement in art, also gave us some dark and twisted work, like this painting of two bodiless heads, which were part of his Morgue study series. Edvard Munch's The Death of Marat is another piece of old that embraces the shadows of mortality. With artist Maya Kulinovic, you aren't quite sure what you're looking at, but one thing is certain, there is an ominous overtone with even more mysterious undertones. Artist and author Edward Gorey introduces us to a more whimsical take on the dark and macabre. You might be surprised to find out that Clive Barker was not only an excellent author, with fantastic books like Imagico or Aberrat, he is also a talented artist. H.R. Giger creates some stunning pieces of art as he creates and cultivates his many steampunk-inspired monsters. Michael Hussar takes us to Disneyland, though not quite as some of us might remember it. Here's one of my new favorites by Dole called Our Daily Blood. Dark goes sinister cute with Scott Radke and these adorable little forest creatures. Grzegorz Gamin, known in the art world as Aspius, astounds us with chaotic and creepy images that we won't soon forget. Nicoletta Ciccoli's allegorical piece, Dicing Up Vegetables, and Mark Ryden's piece, Euglena, mark a new and interestingly dark style of art. These artists seem to draw from a creepy childhood perspective. But what is a list of romantically dark artists without our beloved Tim Burton, who from simple pen and paper evolved into so much more? Lastly, here's a piece I did when I was 16. May you all embrace the shadows and allow them to inspire you as they do me.
Who doesn't love a good Disney movie? They give us a chance to relive some of the classic fairy tales from children's literature across the ages and all over the globe. But sometimes, the screenwriters take a few liberties with the story, and so not every story that Disney told us had happy endings. Sometimes they didn't have much happiness in them at all. Who doesn't love the classic fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty? But did you know that originally, Briar Rose slept for 100 years and many princes tried to break the spell, but were caught in the hedge of thorns around the castle and died. At least she was eventually found by the right prince and revived, whereas the Little Mermaid was not quite as lucky. After Ariel is turned human, her tail splits into legs, but the painful process caused her legs to keep bleeding. She was destined to die if she didn't marry the prince. When unsuccessful, the witch tells her to stab the prince in order to live. She refused and so died, and since mermaids don't have souls, she turned to foam. Not all tales are of the romantic variety. In the Jungle Book, Mowgli attempted to return to the man village. The movie shows him making the transition from the world of animals back to his people. But the book was not quite so forgiving, and Mowgli is driven out of the village. Hurt and with vengeance in his heart, he returns with the angry elephant known as Hathi, and they proceed to stomp the village to the ground. Sometimes it's a classic rather than a fairy tale that Disney takes liberties with. After Robin Hood is pardoned by Richard the Lionhearted, he sends Robin and Marian abroad. While in an eastern land, Marian dies of the plague, and Robin returns to Sherwood to await Richard's second return. But the king never comes back, leaving Robin to continue being hunted as a criminal until his death. This may seem like just a few of the many stories told by Disney, but the list goes on and on, with the original Peter Pan killing any lost boy that gets too old, Mother Gothel blinding Rapunzel's prince, Hercules being tricked by Hera into killing Megara and his children, and Frollo framing Esmeralda for murder and hanging her in the square, leading the hunchbacked Quasimodo to throw Frollo off the roof, and then climb into Esmeralda's grave, where he remains until starvation takes him.
Let these tears drip not from my eyes. Let my pains not bring me down. Let my death be not too close. Let my dreams one day be true. Let my eyes see no more hate. Let my heart feel no more pain. Let me fly free with my beloved, or let me fly alone.
This week, we're looking for news that's not just odd, but also a bit morbid, a little macabre, maybe just slightly darker than usual. While taking a break in Germany, an undertaker traveling from Italy to Poland lost his hearse. Now, many of us have parked the car and forgotten where it was, but this particular vehicle still contained a body. Police assisted in locating the missing hearse and body, though it took over 24 hours and was found 2 miles away from the location the undertaker reported leaving it. Speaking of the dead, 2 British fishermen decided they would honor the death of their good friend by going on a fishing trip in Thailand, where they managed to catch a 180-pound Siamese carp. What made this fish an homage to their friend, at least in their mind, was the special bait used, what they dubbed Purple Ronnie. What kind of bait is that? Well, if you said it was the ashes of their friend Ron Hooper, you'd be right. Heading to the opposite side of the world, a man in Florida was fleeing arrest and decided to cut through a lake in order to escape capture. In the end, it wasn't the police that managed to slow him down, but rather the alligator that called that lake home. The police found him as he crawled out of the woods. He was missing about 3/4 of his left arm. Speaking of reptiles, a father in India woke to strange sounds late one night. After a hissing noise became loud enough to wake him, he turned on a light to discover 2 coiled snakes in the corner of the room. That seems disturbing, but it turned out not to be the worst of his night. As he tried to shoo them out, he found over 100 more snakes slithering throughout his home. It took the assistance of neighbors and hired help to clear the snakes out over the course of the night and early morning. Finding your home filled with snakes seems like a nightmare, but residents of a flat in Madrid had their own troubles. For 2 years, a humming noise was intermittently heard in one of the partition walls, but this hum turned out not to be electrical, but rather insectile. Residents called the fire brigade when they spotted bees swarming the tree next to the apartment building. When specialists couldn't find the queen in the tree, they followed the trail to the flat, where they discovered 25,000 bees inside the wall. You may have heard the phrase, "fact is stranger than fiction." Here is a list of some truly twisted and strange stories that are all unfortunately true.
Children at Riverwood Elementary in Australia found 1.5 liters of blood in their playhouse. It was immediately deduced that whoever bled out was no longer alive. The body was never found.
While the story of Harry Potter brought us a wizard with a hidden Voldemort stemming from the back of his head, a true story rendered us Edward Mordrake. He was born with a second face attached to the back of his head.
While this face could not speak, it did in fact laugh and cry separately from Edward's emotions. He beckoned doctors to remove what he called his devil twin. Doctors refused to perform the surgery, and at the age of 23, Edward committed suicide.
A man who suspected someone of stealing his food set up a camera in his kitchen to catch the thief. What the camera captured was not quite what he expected. What he saw was a woman emerge from his cupboard and then proceed to eat his food, leave the room to apparently shower, and then returned to the cupboard.
Having a person take residence in an abandoned building is one thing, but stories of people living in your home without you even knowing are actually quite scary and more true than you might imagine.
Marcus Jans of Stockholm was hanging out at a Swedish website called Flashback when he announced his suicide. Several people on the site taunted him and called his bluff, but moments later he went on live video feed where he did, in fact, end his life.
You might be surprised to know that over 7,000 people die every year on account of illegible doctors' handwriting.
Religion has often been used as a justification for war and death. Joan of Arc claimed to have been guided by her god to fight for the King of France, Charles VII.
Much blood was shed and many fights were won, but the knight who fought alongside her turned out to have his own dark secret.
He had apparently been killing children between the ages of 6 and 18 for sport, outside of serving the king's army. Various reports estimate the number of children to be between 80 and 800.
It's a scary world we live in, and many things happen both in darkness and in light.
So be safe and be aware. This is Jason
and Ahmed, signing off.
Average report, yes, it was about children, and it's confirmed the